The whole thing had gone down where I'd made the switch and everything. And that night, I got a buddy of mine with an ISO tank operator reached out. He was in China and had an incident in Houston. And that night, he reached out to me on Instant Messenger and said, "Hey, I got this thing." I was like, "Well, I'm no longer with the company I was at. I'm now doing my own thing." He's like, "I don't care. Just get it taken care of."
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. We're here today, as usual, in the Propel Production Podcast studio in Baton Rouge, and we welcome our guest, Mr. Aaron Montgomery, founder and CEO of Ouray Services and president of Hydera. So welcome to the podcast, Aaron.
Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's really cool because you reached out to us, right? You are in the environmental remediation business, had listened to an episode with Chris Ferrara, right? Y'all,
That's right.
And you guys actually work together.
That's right.
On different projects. And so home is where for you?
Charleston, South Carolina.
And that's where the new company, Hydera, is?
That's right.
Your initial company, Ouray, is headquartered where?
In Denver, Colorado. Yeah.
Denver. Okay. You have had the most interesting hobby as a competitive ice climber. And I just found that super interesting. So I kind of made the connection. I'm guessing that when I look up Ouray, that's a really small, beautiful little community in Colorado. What did I read? It's like the Switzerland of...
Yeah, they call it Little Switzerland.
Right.
Yeah. I hate to say this to a lot of people because it drives more people there, but it's the best town in Colorado.
Yeah.
I don't think it's not even close. No ski resort, so you don't have ski resort money going into the place, but beautiful.
But that is where you obviously frequented there. Is that where you would train for your ice?
Yeah, it's kind of the mecca of ice climbing.
Oh, okay.
They've got a canyon there that there's a pipeline that feeds the town water, and then they tap into that pipeline and it flows. They flow it over the side of the canyon. They grow ice on the side of the canyon, and you can ice climb there.
No way.
Yeah.
Now, what's the highest height that they do? And how high are you guys climbing?
I've climbed 1,000-foot walls before, or ice structures before, but there it's single pitch, so sometimes maybe 50 meters, 40 meters from bottom to top.
I saw the documentary, The Alpinist, within the last year or two, and that is the story about Mark Leclerc, I think his name is. And have you seen that?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, it's a fascinating documentary. He was a really unusual guy. He was considered like the best climber of the century.
No one's ever heard of, kind of.
Yeah, and it was he was very under the radar, and he would go do climbs by himself. But they ended up doing a documentary about him, and it just ended tragically. But it was a fascinating show. But you never ran into him.
No, I didn't know him. I think similar circles in some cases, but and I've climbed on some of the structures or the mountains in some of the same areas. Never never climbed with him or knew him or in any way.
And that got me thinking about that other documentary I saw. Was it Free Solo?
Yeah.
With Alex Honnold?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Now, you had met him, had you?
Yeah, one time. I don't know him, but...
Yeah. So it's just fascinating to even be in that realm. That documentary was him doing the free solo, no ropes, no belays on El Capitan, right?
Yeah.
That was insane.
Yeah, I always had a partner. Always used a rope. I have kids. I'm not. Trying. I think it's underestimated how elite of an athlete Alex Honnold is.
Yeah,
it's hard to even talk about it in relevant terms, I think.
Yeah, you picked that up in the documentary, and that one episode where he makes that crazy move and he has to jump from one wall to the next and catch and onto like his fingers, and if he misses, he's dead.
Yeah,
it's fascinating. I was in Colorado 2 weeks ago, cycling in Summit County in that area, just incredibly beautiful. And that drive from Denver, I'm sure you know well, up to Frisco or Vail, is one of my favorite in the country. Just very beautiful. But the last few times I've been coming in the back way, Highway 9 and 287, and it's just like 300 miles of incredible beauty.
It is. High plains up there, and yeah, it's really, really beautiful.
It's just stunning. Let's talk about Ouray. So tell us what it is that Ouray does.
So we're a global emergency response and chemical services company. Our customers are 90% of the projects we do are for large chemical manufacturers, and if you're in this industry at all, it's the names you've heard of, the big, top 50 chemical manufacturers of the world. Most of the other 10%, probably 8%, are ISO tank operators working for ISO tanks, and then the other 2% is kind of random, different random things. But our sweet spot is to provide global emergency response, global chemical services to those companies, and we effectively manage their responses. If they have a response, we make sure it's done properly, safely, done in the right way, handled, any waste is disposed of in the right way, and we manage that process for them.
So in working for the chemical manufacturers, that's implying that in the process, if there's an accident at their plant.
So we have done and do conduct in what we call in-gate activities, but most of what we do is out-of-gate activities. So
what would be an example of that?
So if a container gets dropped or is leaking, and then we'll respond. So in transportation, and then that's probably a good portion of our business. That's the start of the business, emergency response, turnkey emergency response, and we've grown from there to do other field type services, including a lot of transload, a lot of specialty projects that I can get into. But
yeah, we'll talk about that. So office locations where?
Denver, Colorado's the corporate, and then just opened a new location here in Hammond, Louisiana, north of Hammond in Tickfall. We have Lima, Peru, and in Singapore.
Wow. Okay, we'll get into the stories of how you got there. Curious how you got in the business. How did you don't just start that business, you had years of experience working for others. What did that look like?
In high school, I grew up on a farm. In high school, I worked as a mechanic at a local auto shop in the town I grew up in Oklahoma, and did that until my first year of college, and got tired of working on farm trucks, with mud raining down as you're taking the transmission out and stuff. And I was like, I want to do something different. So I was going to college, like I said, commuting back and forth to college. Went and got a job at an environmental company and really liked it. Ultimately changed my major. I worked full-time, went to school full-time. Took me 5.5 years to get through, and then I've been doing, that was in 2001. I've been doing it ever since in one way or another. Yeah,
it's interesting to hear you to consider that you were working as a mechanic in high school.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not full-time, right? But
I mean, it's just like when I think of that now, it's like, it's hard to imagine a high schooler being a mechanic in today's age. You know?
Yeah. I mean, still today, sometimes I'd much rather be working with my hands than.
You're just mechanically minded, and
I enjoy enjoy. I guess I traded the raining mud for plastic suits and
The hazmat suits.
yeah.
But that turned into a career, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you worked at a number of companies for a number of years.
Yeah, so I worked as a technician for three years or so, and then thought I wanted to try industrial hygiene, which is like safety and airflows and personal exposure and things like that. I did that for about a year. I didn't like it as much as and there's people are really good at that. It wasn't for me. Went back to got a project manager job at the company I was at doing technician work. Really, I was doing national emergency response for that company, and I've always just really liked this business. And that was all in Oklahoma, and about 14 years ago, we moved to Colorado and started a national division for an existing environmental firm there. I was there for about 4 years. And it's time to break out. And
so what was it that made you feel it was time for you to start your own gig?
I guess I kind of always wanted to do that, whether it's an expressed plan or not. I don't know. Just kind of, I guess I always growing up in the country, I didn't have a lot of opportunities to be an entrepreneur or have that feeling. But as I got older, I just kind of always leaned to one day I want to do my own thing, have my own business, provide services that weren't being provided, and try to do so in a good way.
Yeah, it strikes me that if a company needs a service, an environmental remediation, cleanup, emergency response, that's critically important that it's done timely and it's done properly and it minimizes their exposure versus increases their liabilities. And so they have to know that the company they hire to do that is going to check those boxes for them.
Yeah, it's a trust business for sure.
Yeah. But when you start, how do you get that first shot? My thought is you had built your reputation in the industry.
That's right.
And so when you go to start your business, how did you secure your first accounts?
Yeah, I mean, luckily I had those relationships, and was able to bring kind of a key customer with us to start the business, and really helped us get our foothold. But it was still, we started Ouray. It was extra bedroom in my house, managing projects, subcontracting 100% of the projects, and then we've grown by customer, obviously, but also by capability, where we're doing more and more of the work ourselves.
So when you start that, you walk into your new company with a customer, but your customer has to have a need, right? I mean, how does it work? Are you waiting for them to have an emergency to call you? Or are you providing other services? How do you put food on the table from the time you start to the time your first job?
Yeah, I mean, it's an up and down business sometimes, and which can be difficult to manage cash flow for sure. Like that customer that came, they have a lot of small releases into containments, so it's not released to the environment. It's hey, this tote is leaking of water treatment chemicals, and we're going to send a new tote, and we need you to pump it out, clean the old one so it can be shipped back and repaired and put the good chemical back in. And we do those. We still do those today. In 2011, we still do those for them today. And it's, repetitive business. And it really gave us a foundation to grow on for sure.
It's been a philosophy of mine. Most companies start small, right? I like to and have been able to remain nimble enough to continue to do those small projects for our clients, even 30 years later. As you grow your capabilities and grow the size of your projects. And a lot of companies don't do that. They outgrow the small projects. There's maybe more appeal or more profit in the larger projects, and then they lose the ability to do the smaller ones. But your client really wants you to be able to handle all their needs.
Right.
That's easier said than done, I think.
It is, because in the bigger projects, which we do also, they take, they suck up all the manpower, especially in a small business like ours, and to be able to continue to, I think that's kind of twofold. We have a concerted effort to make sure that we're handling the small things and doing the small things well too. We also have great customers we have great relationships with that understand, where we are and how we manage, and work with us. So.
And so you started with a contractor base, a vendor base. So as a need came up, you're subcontracting that out, but you're managing the entire response.
Correct.
Would you have a person on site if it was a big enough project?
Yeah, the nice thing about this business is every job is different than the last, no matter how similar it may seem. And we're very used to getting information in and saying, what is this? How is the process going to work from the beginning to end? You got to do that very quickly. And if it's a large incident, if it's a complicated, dangerous product, we may send, and depending on where it is and how much trust we have in the vendor that we would send to the site, we may send oversight to them. We may mobilize our own team. We may hop on a jet, mobilize our whole team to the site. And it's just it's kind of a big sliding scale of how are we going to manage this, which is great. It's very interesting, everything.
Yeah. I think, whenever I think of cost to do a environmental cleanup, you always hear, whenever you do hear those numbers, that they're expensive. The way I think about it is you're paying not only for the service, the expertise, the equipment, the insurance and everything for that operation, but you're also paying for the availability of those men, for that team, for those experts to be available, which includes downtime, right? I mean, it's like if you, on a smaller scale, if you're going to rent a specialized piece of equipment, well, you're not just actually paying for the time that you rent it. You're paying for the time that it sits unrented as well, right? That's baked into the cost. So when you consider that, and you consider that's a scenario in which you're hiring contractors, how, starting off your business, how do you work through that cash flow? It seems to come with some high capital requirements. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is. There's a lot of demands on this industry to have all the right training, all the right equipment ready and available all the time.
Yeah.
And most importantly, when I call, the customer, when I call, it needs to be available. It can be an extremely complicated cash flow standpoint. You may be in a slow period, and then you get a big project, and then it sucks up all your cash until you get paid, 60 days, 90 days later, whatever the case may be. It can be challenging.
Do you remember your first big job?
I remember my first big job yes, I remember Ouray's first big job. I also remember my first big job, from whenever I project managed a tanker rollover, acid tanker in Oklahoma. I remember that very well.
How many cars was that?
Well, it was a guy was, I think it was sulfuric acid. The guy was driving and 4 o'clock in the morning. It was dark out. Came off of a bridge. There was a black cow in the road. Didn't see it till it was too late.
Oh, it was an 18-wheeler?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a rail car.
No, this is a 18-wheeler. So yeah, hit that, went over and spilled the 3,000 gallons of sulfuric acid in the sand. And we do a lot of rail car services now. Ouray does. So.
And so your first big job with Ouray.
Yeah, actually, a buddy of mine, the whole thing had gone down where I'd made the switch and everything. And that night, I got a buddy of mine with an ISO tank operator reached out. He was in China and had an incident in Houston. And that night, he reached out to me on Instant Messenger and said, "Hey, I got this thing." I was like, "Well, I'm no longer with the company I was at. I'm now doing my own thing." He's like, "I don't care. Just get it taken care of." So the very night.
No kidding.
Yeah. So that was neat.
So that's a good way to start, huh?
Yeah, it helped for sure.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. I think the obvious answer to this is, what was your plan to start? Right now, Ouray is a global firm. You do work all over the world. When you started, did you see yourself going global, or was it just, look, we're gonna focus on domestic or even regional? What was your plan there?
No, it was absolutely a global mission. I think it's something I always wanted to do, and it's really one of the big reasons why I left where I was. Is I had a global focus. I knew that needed investment at the company I was with. They didn't want to. They weren't that interested in going global or pushing in the way that I wanted to go. So, it's a big driver. Ended up doing it, and founding Ouray with the mission of handling our customers' needs on a global basis, no matter their commodity, their container, or where it is. And that's been, we started with the Americas, North and South America. I spent a lot of time going to South America and forging relationships. And that's, chemical manufacturers are typically siloed like that anyways. They're a global company, and somebody's in, say, Houston that manages the Americas, and somebody's in Europe that manages EMEA and Asia to manage that region. So we started. Now, we did projects in Asia and Europe from time to time, but not a lot. It was mostly, like I say, the Americas. And even today, we have contracts, global contracts with North American companies and European companies and Asia companies. That's where their global headquarters is, but still probably 98, 97% of the work we do is in the U.S.
Hannis T. Bourgeois provides accounting services, litigation support, as well as tax and assurance services to companies and individuals throughout the region. With offices in Baton Rouge, Denham Springs, New Orleans, and Hammond, their team of professionals have a wide range of specialized expertise and give personalized attention to each client they work with. HTB serves all types of business structures, including corporations, private businesses, startups, individuals, and more. So call them today to learn how they can help you. Reach out to them by phone or learn more at their website, www.htbcpa.com. A little testimonial here. HTB has been my accounting firm for over 30 years and have guided my initial company from startup to expanding to numerous operating companies. HTB has provided guidance in helping us expand across the U.S., doing business in more than 30 states. Flat out, HTB has made all the difference in the world to our business. This podcast is sponsored by NAI Ladder & Blum, Louisiana's leading commercial real estate firm, offering expertise in every discipline, including office, industrial, retail, multifamily, and corporate services. Their agents guide you through the real estate process from start to finish, using a host of marketing, prospecting, and analytical technologies. As leading entrepreneurs, your valuable time and resources should align with the most trusted name in commercial real estate, NAI Ladder & Blum. Learn how they can work for you at www.ladderblum.com. TurnKey Solutions is a nationwide cybersecurity and IT systems expert, providing the services that growing businesses need to stay ahead of hackers, hurricanes, and IT nightmares. With 24/7 support teams and offices across Louisiana and Texas, they bring peace of mind to companies of all sizes. Their 5-star rated team provides lightning-fast IT support with the cybersecurity and business continuity solutions today's businesses demand. When you're looking for a technology partner to provide you with peace of mind, find out more by calling them at 225-224-6594 or chat with them online at www.tks.la/NXT. Aaron, what was your initial trajectory like in your business? Those first few years, what did those look like? Was that a slow build? Did you ramp up quickly?
The first, as you said earlier, this business is reputation based, and it really took. And we had some good customers early on, and then it kind of plateaued. It takes a long time before somebody at a $50 billion company, trusts that Aaron or whatever, Ouray, is going to answer the phone at 3 a.m. and help them where they need to be helped. And so we kind of had this initial launch of the business, right. And then, over the next 3 to 4 years, it got a little bigger, and really pre-COVID, kind of 2018, 19, we started to really take off, and then COVID hit, and everybody went to zero budgets, and then it kind of we didn't have a bad year, but it just kind of tapered.
Yeah.
And then now we're seeing it kind of pick up again over the last roughly year. So
Yeah.
it's been nice.
Business kind of slammed on the brakes during COVID.
Right.
But I think of in your business as being otherwise somewhat recession proof, because if an accident happens, whether they got the budget or not, they got to take care of it, right?
Right.
Are they
What stopped was the ability for these companies to sign up new contractors. Right. So we started to gain more customers, and explore more ways. And two things stopped. One, they couldn't. These companies couldn't sign up new vendors, and two, there weren't as many opportunities for us to get in front of them and say, hey, you could be using us in this way or that way. And then we were really going hard in Asia, building a consortium with some of the world's largest chemical producers, all coming together. We all met together in the Singapore summit we had under the Ouray flag in 2019. We were going to put together this grand plan, and that just COVID came, and it just done.
Oh man!
So we're there in Asia now, in a smaller capacity out of Singapore. It was going to be locations and equipment from Korea, Japan, China, multiple locations in China and India and Indonesia and the Philippines, and on and on and on.
So these are the companies in Asia that you're talking about. They're global companies, and so is you're into those companies through the Americas, through contacts in the Americas?
Mostly. Chemours is a legacy DuPont company, and they make gases, they make freons and different things. And they're, a lot of the legacy DuPont companies really take their emergency response seriously. Others do too, and I'm not degrading anybody else, but they really, years ago have invested lots and lots of money and in training and equipment and all those types of things. The shift from, responsible care is a chemical initiative that says we're responsible for these chemicals and we're going to do what's right for the industry, not just for us. Right. And they take those principles very serious. And in 2018, Chemours reached out to us and said, help us get a handle on our Asia Pacific response. We feel like there's a need there. There's not enough good vendors in the region. So we worked with them closely to build what we called response pods, which is a 20-foot intermodal unit that was, full of response equipment and then we would stage these as in those countries I talked about before. We got the inventory together. We worked together on it. And they were like, this is perfect. This is exactly what we want, but it's a lot of money. And it is a lot of money, right? So they said, let's go to market. Let's see who's out there. Let's see who's have similar needs. And so we reached out to our customer base. They reached out to their colleagues or their sister other companies in the industry. We all came together in 2019 for the Singapore summit. We had representatives there from all over the globe, the U.S., India, obviously people were in Singapore, China, all over, and from all different chemical manufacturers. We brought everybody together, and it could have been a thing where they were like, okay, I've got it covered here, and I think that there was some of that, and everybody there was absolutely true. Everybody there wants to do the right thing, or they wouldn't have invested in that.
Right. It was a means of splitting the cost for having those pods available in that part of the world that could be deployed to whomever needed it at that time.
Yeah, and I guess I should say in emergency response, right, you need equipment, you need personnel. Right. And moving people is generally a lot easier than moving equipment.
Right.
Because even though Singapore and Malaysia are connected, if you go dragging a big truck across the border, that you haven't declared, you're going to run into some problems, right? So the idea was to get the equipment in the regions, and then if we need to, we can mobilize people from different regions. And that's still the goal. But when COVID hit, this was going to be still spread out. It was going to be a lot of money for these companies. When COVID hit, it was like, we're going to have to reset and rethink about this. So, but we still have that mission. We're still working in that way. We have an office in Singapore that has real responsive equipment, gas compression equipment, and liquid and gas transloading equipment, and those types of things that you need to to do a functional response for some of the commodities that are moving through that market.
When I read about Ouray creating the world's first global emergency response network, that's the backbone of it that you're talking about right there?
Yeah, so we have thousands of subcontractor locations, and it's up to our customers look to us to manage what is the type of commodity, how big of an incident is it, how public is it, and what is the correct response. If it's a 5-gallon pail of non-reg, we'll send a vendor to the site. We will just work with them to manage that. And then we have to understand, what are their capabilities? Is it a, toxic by inhalation release of a gas in India? Then we're going to need, in that case, to provide additional oversight or to have 4 people get on a jet and fly there immediately. So they look to us for that in most cases, or we'll work in concert with them. Maybe they'll provide the jet and they'll send some people and we'll all go together. It varies by customer. That's why I love this industry. It's all different. Yeah. Every customer is different. Every commodity is different. Every container is different. Every project's different.
So what kind of buy-in did you get in that building of the network from the manufacturers in those different countries?
Well, so our customers are mostly U.S. based. We're not in
with
most
Asian operations.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, or so shipping into those markets maybe. So we're not necessarily doing response in India for Indian companies.
Okay. Yeah. I was curious when you were talking about that, if other countries around the world have as strict environmental requirements as we would in the U.S. and it sounds like,
but there is a need for people to get involved. Sometimes it's just economics. Sometimes it's just commerce. Sometimes, generally, with our customers, it's that responsible care principle. It's the right thing to do, not just for me, but for the industry and for the people.
Which happens probably because they're a U.S. company and there's liability that underlies all of that, and therefore, they can deploy that philosophy into these other countries as well.
Yeah. I mean, it is some of that. Like there wasn't a lot of regulations here in the 50s and 60s, and they're still, a lot of them are still paying for it today in the groundwater remediation, different things. So they're sensitive to that in the future. Also, you just want to do the right thing, and it needs to be done in the right way.
Give us an idea on some of your more complex remediation projects, what that looks like. Give us an example of a couple of different projects so we can understand in more detail what it is and what that looks like.
Yeah, so from an emergency response standpoint, we do a lot of kind of mid-tier projects, small, I say small, like ISO tank, road tanker transloading because of a damaged valve or things like that. But we've also done chemical plant fires where we work closely, like with your previous guest, U.S. Fire Pump, Chris Ferreira.
Yeah.
And in that case, we were both kind of direct to the chemical manufacturer, and we worked together on site, where they will apply firefighting foam and equipment and deploy all these technologies to put the fire out. Where we work on, there's chemical in that tank. That's a heat impacted vessel. It's a heat impacted product. What's different about the product post the heat impaction? What's different about that vessel? How do we safely get that material out? What's the vapor pressure of that material? Those types of things. So we'll work on that, and we'll work in concert with people like that. Those are interesting projects because, again, it's a common theme here. Everything's different. Yeah. Every calculation is different, and we really like the difficult projects that allow us to not only get our hands dirty, but also engage our brains. So we did a project with a commodity chemistry called isopropyl chloroformate. It's a flammable, toxic material that also emits, part of the process of manufacturing, it uses phosgene, which is one of the most toxic by inhalation materials known to man. They used to use it actually in World War I to gas people. But it's a powerful industrial chemical also. So and they use it to make this isopropyl chloroformate, and it emits out of it. So it's very, very toxic. And there's this material's shipped all over the world, and it was shipped and then into a customer or into our customer location, and it was slightly off spec. So it couldn't be used for its intended purpose. Problem is that this project is in the Philippines and Brazil. So problem was it couldn't be properly disposed of in those areas because they don't have the incineration technology here.
So it couldn't be used; it had to be disposed of.
Right,
completely.
Right. Even here, it's difficult to dispose of in large quantities just because of its BTU capacity and things like that. And if you don't get a proper burn on it, all these things, right? Chlorine gas, things like that. So it's chlorine-based chemistry. So our customer came to us and said, we have this problem. Can you help us solve it? I think the nature of our business is, yes, we can solve it. Let's figure it out, right? Yeah. That's we love those types of things. We can't figure it out. Can you? Oh, yeah, we'll figure it out, right? Yeah. So we went to work. We did the chemistry. We did the engineering of reaction vessels. We welded the reaction vessels ourselves, put all that stuff in a container, and shipped it to the Philippines. So we had to do all the paperwork and all the customs and all that to get it into the Philippines. And then we flew a team into the Philippines to do the work. And then we get there and COVID hit. So all at the same time. So they've been there a week and they're just basically getting set up. And the Philippine government said, I was there, I guess they would have been there 2 weeks. So I was there a week with everyone. I left. We had to come back to South Carolina actually, and to transload of some pretty nasty material. There's a common theme here, right? Ouray does. Ouray. It's one of the few companies we do a lot of work with very hazardous. What we call internally, we call them materials of high consequence. So we have a material of high consequence team, and that's kind of our core thing is these highly hazardous commodities that are dangerous when wet, or fuming acids, chlorine emitting, bromine, fluorine type, toxic, corrosive, all the fun chemistries. Right? A lot of people don't deal with it, and we like it. For some reason. We have a very, I hesitate to say this, but we have a very unofficial motto that is smart enough to do it safe, right? Knock wood. Smart enough to do it safe, dumb enough to think it's cool. But so they were there another week, and COVID just exploded in the region. The Philippine government told all expats they must leave immediately. And there's pictures of the interstate, the highway, and leading from south where we were up to Manila. And in most days, that's bumper to bumper, 24 hours a day, just madness. And they have a picture of them driving out on that road, and they are the only ones on it.
Oh my gosh.
Other than military personnel with rifles. It's crazy. So they had to leave. And we were gone for a long time, went back again and had the same thing happen again once we were finally able to get back. We've learned a lot through that process also too. And our customer has found some more people that know even more. So we're actually doing a bit more changes to our reaction process, and we're going back again. We'll be shipping more equipment, and then it'll probably be January. It's kind of a long process here, but it's an incredibly interesting project that's incredibly complicated, right up our alley. We love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's so fascinating when you consider it's so highly specialized, in what you do, and that you can go all over the world and do that. And
we've got a great team of people. I mean, it's not lip service, right? In our business, you either have great people or you don't do the projects we do, or if you do, you get them hurt.
Yeah.
Right? So it means a lot that the people that we have within the business, we're a real team. Like everybody says that, but I mean it. It's the truth, because nobody knows everything in this business, and every commodity. There's too many commodities, too many hazards, too many ways to get hurt, and so we all really have to pull together and say, nope, that's a dumb idea. And I don't mind people telling me that's a dumb idea. Right? Nobody else in our business should care either.
So the hazmat suit is part of y'all's routine when you're on sites in most or all instances. Mm-hmm. So have y'all ever had any close calls? I mean, it sounds like you're dealing with the most toxic chemicals there are.
I mean, we try to take every sometimes in my climbing career, right, it's you don't the things that almost killed you probably you didn't know at the time. You found out later,
Yeah.
But I mean, we've got knock wood again. We've got an excellent safety record.
Yeah.
We take things. We do say it again. I guess we do very hazardous things that, if not done right, can be very dangerous.
Yeah.
And I guess what I typically tell people is those are potentially hazardous materials to you. The word potential is the key word, right? So how do you interact with it? Do you have to interact with it? Can you engineer a way not to, be in a gas cloud at the time, whatever the case may be, or not? Or do you just have to go to the fuming cloud and turn the valve, or whatever the case may be?
Yeah. So in managing a complex operation where every job is different, every day is different, what is it about you that makes you successful at that? What is it that you do best?
Me personally.
Yeah.
That's what you're asking.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess, am I? No, but I guess the ability to, I think, work as a team and take criticism. I think that's probably the best thing. And then make the right choices and work hard when the right choice is found.
Well, your employees know the environment that they're working in, right? They're chemists and
it's hard to get good employees, let me tell you, for this kind of work.
Well, I would think, and I would suspect that they're very well paid.
Yep. Try to. At
the same time, as well as they are aware of, the risk associated with being on a site that's got a hazardous release, managing them and asking them to go to this job or that job or into this situation, I think takes a certain gift. And I don't know if that's, I won't ask you to do what I don't do type mentality. Is there something there?
Yeah. I mean, everybody knows that I'll get in a suit and do the things that I'm asking them to do. I think they understand that I know the risks also,
right.
that I understand the pressure of just being away from your family too for these long durations, to go to the Philippines for a month, and work in the heat every day, and I don't take that lightly.
Yeah.
And luckily most of the people all the people in Ouray, and I mean this sincerely, they're there for a reason, and I don't have to ask twice.
Yeah. We would like to thank MBD Automation for their support of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. MBD Automation is a mechanical install contractor with a program-centric focus. So what do these guys do? They install conveyor systems, VRCs, platforms, singulators, sorters, and all sorts of other types of automated equipment. Who do they work for? They work for systems integrators, manufacturers, and end users in fulfillment centers, airports, mail processing facilities, and projects in the defense industry. MBD Automation works for numerous Fortune 500 companies across the United States and has a list of international clients that they perform work for in the U.S. as well. If MBD Automation can help you on your next project, you can find them online at mbdautomation.com. This podcast is sponsored by Mayhall, Fondren Blaze, a Louisiana business litigation firm offering sophisticated legal advice that is tailored to meet the needs of their individual clients, including a wide variety of litigation, complex business negotiations, corporate formations, closings, and title examination. As leading entrepreneurs, your valuable time and resources should align with the expertise of MFB, a Louisiana practice made for business. Learn how we can work with you at www.mfbfirm.com. Could you or your business benefit from a comprehensive financial plan? Our sponsor, Centura Advisors, is a locally owned firm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana that specializes in personal and business financial planning, tax planning, corporate retirement plans, and investment management. We provide an all-in-one wealth management service so busy business owners like you can take back your valuable time. Visit www.centura-advisors.com to learn more. Centura Advisors, it's time to plan your future. It's just super fascinated with how you've been able to grow this international business out of a relatively small crew of experts. It just shows the empowerment of being a specialist at that level in your niche of environmental cleanup operations. So I was curious if each of your offices, you got Singapore, Lima, Peru, office here, South Carolina, are each of those a separate profit center? How do you manage that part of your business?
Yeah, so like the Singapore entity is a wholly owned subsidiary. Ouray Singapore PT Ltd. It's a corporation in Singapore, and that's owned by what is effectively the parent company, Ouray Environmental Services. So, and that's got its own profit center. It's got its own way of doing business, even, and some of the costs that are associated with being a customer of that business because of the specialty nature of that. So every incident's a little different.
Yeah.
We're just here. I mean, we're not incorporated in Louisiana. We're a foreign entity here.
And so how much travel is required when you consider your global empire?
Empire.
Yeah.
So, in 18 and 19, I traveled a lot. 154,000 miles. I was in Europe. I was in South America. I was in Asia twice. I was all over the U.S. And
that's a lot of miles.
It's a lot of miles. 2020 and
COVID changed all that.
Yeah. Dead stop, right? But it was great because I've got a couple of young kids. I got 9-year-old twin boys. Great to be able to spend more time with them and help my wife more.
Yeah.
My awesome wife, right?
Yeah.
Couldn't do it without her. We don't have any family in Colorado, so she had to do a lot of that alone. So it was good to be home and through that time for sure.
How do you build your brand?
Yeah, I took a piece of advice I picked up along the way somewhere that the number one threat to a small business is obscurity. If they don't know you, they will not spend money with you. That's true 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Right. So we do some shows. Most of it's business, just interacting with people, going, visiting, traveling, relatively active on LinkedIn, just getting information out, say, don't forget about us kind of thing.
Right.
And then typically if we get a new customer, we find that the more people use us, the more they use us.
Right.
Like we've been described by our customers as the easy button, so we love that. We love that. Call us and it's taken care of.
Are you doing a lot of business development or do you have separate business development guys?
That's part of the business I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do most of the business development. I really like that. I like going and shaking hands and sitting down and having a conversation about our solutions and if they're a good fit and those types of things.
Yeah, I can see that. Tell us about Hydera.
Hydera was Ouray. It's a joint venture with Ouray and Packlet Milliken, and Ouray's been trying to has seen the need for additional ISO tank cleaning, repair, storage within the U.S., particularly along the East Coast, for several years. And have been trying. We're still a small business, but we're trying to get a depot. It's called an ISO tank depot in and build one somewhere along the East Coast. And we tried for several years, had some stops and starts, and focus goes somewhere else. We were doing some transloading at a facility that is actually owned by Packlet Milliken, and they were actually at the time looking at just doing an ISO tank storage yard. Met with the president of that business, and I was like, "Oh, do I have a plan for you? Right? We can go all in. Let's go all in." And we, developed a plan, and it's been great. We've been open. We're kind of slowly still getting open, but we're almost 100% open, and the demand for the services are really high.
Okay, so let me see if I understand what you just said.
Okay.
So the ISO tank, so Hydera would have a facility in which ISO tanks from any of a number of transporters or manufacturers could come in to be cleaned or maintained.
That's right. So unlike Ouray, where we have an office and then we go out and do work, this is a fixed facility. Right. So it's a 10-acre facility, 6.5 acres of 13 to 17-inch concrete where we're stacking these ISO tanks 3 high. And then we have a wash rack. We've got 8 cleaning bays, so we'll pull them in, clean the inside, clean the outside, so that they can be loaded with a different product, or so that they can be tested, because they need 2.5-year, 5-year tests. We pressure test every one. We can do maintenance and repair on them. Sometimes materials are solid when they're cold or when they're at.
Right.
So they load them hot, and then they ship them from Europe to Charleston in the winter, and it gets hard. So we'll heat them back down, turn them back into liquid for delivery. So we do those types of our services.
And so the ISO tanks are owned by others?
They are. They are NVOs, non-vessel operators, what they're called. So Hoyers and ITTs and Stoltz of the world that own those. You'll see them going down the road with their name on the side, and we're service to those, generally to those customers.
Where do you see that business going? What is the growth potential of that?
It's enormous. It's that other parts of the other competitors to ours are turning into monopolies, and they're powerful, and they're but there's not enough capacity. The ISO tank business is growing over the last 10 to 15 years, about 10% a year. So rapidly, steady growth. There hasn't really been. We're the first new company doing this kind of service that most people have ever seen in their career.
Now, these ISO tanks, these are the ones that we see on the road on the backs of 18-wheelers or whatever.
Yeah, so they've got the same dimension as a Connex box, shipping box, intermodal box, like a dry box. They've got a bunch of different names, but they go on the ships and they get all pinned together and they're stacked. So it's the same dimension, 20 feet, 8 feet by 8.5 feet. It's just a steel frame, and then inside of that frame is a 6,600-gallon stainless steel barrel that'll be insulated.
Yeah,
and those are used in international transports. They can go on a ship, go on a truck, go on a railroad, and
it's a standard.
Yep.
Very cool. That's a really interesting new business line. And so I was interested, Aaron, in when you were talking about the risk in your business, just day to day throughout the whole podcast. And I was thinking about the risk in your hobby, your ice climbing that you've done through your life, and curious, what's going on there. You seem to operate in this high risk environment. Why don't we start before I ask you to delve into that psychology experiment? Tell us what is ice climbing? What does a competition look like? How does that work? I'm not familiar with it.
So ice climbing generally is in the mountains. There'll be a waterfall that in the summer flows water,
right,
and in the winter will freeze solid,
right.
And you'll climb that by starting at the bottom, putting in ice screws on the way up, clipping your rope to it, and abseiling that structure.
Is it typically a time-based competition, or are there routes?
So the competition. So there's two kinds. There's lead and speed. So it's off of the kind of the natural climbing, but lead and speed. And speed's crazy, but you're climbing ice as fast as you can. Your feet are pumping and your arms are pulling as fast as you can, and you're hooking small pieces of ice. And if it breaks and you're crossed over, you can cut your arm. I didn't do much of that speed climbing. I've done it before, and I have the tools to do it. Mine was lead, which is more like difficulty. And if you've ever been to a climbing gym, they got holds on the wall.
Right.
So this is similar. They build a structure. They line it with plywood, and your feet can kick into the plywood, but the tools are on holds, so metal holds or plastic with metal inside them, and then it's all body tension, and if your tool moves 5 degrees, it can slip off and you go falling. So, and then that is scored by how high you get, and tiebreaker is time.
Okay.
So if you top out, the person who tops out quicker wins.
And where is the ice in that? Is there?
So in that, in many cases, there's not a lot of ice. So the speed climbing is on ice. Sometimes they'll hang ice, but to make it the problem with ice in competition is it changes. Every competitor, it may get easier or it may go away.
Right.
So they have to, in some cases there is ice, but in order to make it quote unquote fair, you can't really have a lot of ice in it.
Yeah.
So it's really just the gymnastics nature of overhang climbing, body tension, explosive moves, things like that.
It sounds intense.
It is.
Like athletically, aerobically, it sounds intense. But that no surprising for a Colorado type outdoor hobby. I mean, they all seem a little intense.
Yeah.
What is it about that risk, Aaron? I mean,
I don't
you
know.
seem to gravitate to it.
I don't think I even found out until relatively recently that I have such a different risk tolerance than most people. I don't know if growing up on three-wheelers, maybe. I did some rodeo whenever I was younger, bronc riding. I guess it's just in me. When you talk about risks and managing risks and stuff, I guess I just, maybe I like it and I gravitate towards those types of things. And it's all about the complexity of mitigating those risks also, and the effective mental capacity it takes to go and figure out a way to do this hazardous thing in a safe way.
You always hear there's risk and there's reward, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the greater the risk, if you conquer it, I'm guessing there's the greater reward. So maybe there's something there. What's next for Ouray? What do you see when you look 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road? What are your aspirations or your goals to grow the business?
I mean, it's just to follow our customers to where they need help. I think we want more offices. We want more equipment, more capabilities, and just to continue to service our customers in a better way. That's the way we've always been driven. I'm very pro growth. I want to grow. I want to go and do and be a larger company. It's always served us well to follow what our customers need, and that's where we're going to go. And we recently have incorporated a new business, Ouray Transloading, where we're doing fixed transloading operations here in New Orleans. So it's a similar service, except this is, hey, we want to export this chemical. We don't want to truck it in ISO tanks from the chemical plant in Ohio to the port and then put it on a ship. So we want to send it in rail because it's easier for us. So they'll put it in a rail car, ship it down to New Orleans. We'll put that rail car into 4 ISOs and they'll drive it across town to export, or vice versa, right?
So you're doing that transport from rail car.
We're doing the physical movement of the chemistry from the rail car to the ISO tank or road tank or whatever the case may be.
And where would that happen? At the rail yard, or does?
So we have a fixed facility in partnership with Freedom Intermodal, which is down in New Orleans, right off the Industrial Canal. Great group of people, and they've been doing this for a long time. They still do all the non-regulated material. So, but if it has a placard on it, we do that. So we have an agreement for them. Not a lot of people are offering the hazmat transloading. And we've been doing that for them, or not for necessarily, some cases for, but with them for our own customers or their customers for a little while now.
So when you consider your business, there's a lot of liability. How does that, from an insurance standpoint, when you consider workers' comp? No clue what those type rates would be, but they have to be pretty extreme.
Yeah. Yes. We pay a lot for insurance for sure. Luckily, we have a very good safety record.
Yeah.
And that's because we have great people and
Yeah.
we do things the right way. We have processes in place. We still pay a high rate for workers' comp just because of the classification we're in.
Sure.
Not much you can do about that. But it would be much higher if we were also hurting people, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. It seems like when you describe these new opportunities, Hydera and what you just described in the transloading in New Orleans, it just seems like maybe all this is new to me, but it's very exciting. It seems like endless opportunities.
Yeah, maybe I maybe I have a hard time saying no, right? But I think some of it's that, and some of it's like doing, again, customer-led, doing what's best for the customer and what they're asking for, and doing it in a good way and providing a good service. And I think it's kind of the evolution from the environmental emergency response company to the chemical services company.
Yeah.
And it's just important to do everything the right way.
So
the rest will take care of itself.
So you mentioned in Hydera that a partnership with a private equity firm, and you mentioned your growth at Ouray and your vision you plan to grow. Are you interested in that growth being organic and happening within the financial capabilities of your company as you continue to grow? Or would you entertain private equity coming into Ouray and say, let's expand at a faster pace?
For Packlet Milliken's sake, I'll say they're not a typical private equity. They're like a family fund. They're a long-term asset holding business. They've been excellent partners, really great. And I guess I would be open to private equity and kind of mass expansion of Ouray, but I haven't seen the need. Right. Yeah. Yes. Would it be nice to have more money? Absolutely. Right.
Yeah, sure.
But what's the alternative? What do you have to give up to get it? And is that something that is good for the business? Because we've seen there's been a lot of private equity come into this business over the last several years, and it's not been good for the people, and in many cases not for the company generally. So yes, I would entertain it, but the culture is key, and I'm not really willing to give up control. Mostly because I feel like I would give up control of the culture, whatever control there is there.
Yeah, good point. When I listen to your story and hear you tell us about your business, there's nothing about it that strikes me where there's been missteps or mistakes of any large magnitude.
There were.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you if there's anything differently you would have done along that path of growing your business.
I think, I hate to even call it's kind of one of those things. You don't call yourself a hard man in the mountains, or you don't call yourself an expert. Like, you don't call yourself those things. I think entrepreneur is almost kind of like that too. But I think for the sake of description, I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur, and maybe I've said yes to some things in the past I shouldn't have paid for those, but obviously I call them tuition, right? Yeah. Education.
Absolutely. I mean, I can look at some things that I did prior to 2008 that left me a little more exposed, and how differently I do those now. You have to learn that. And particularly when you're younger and you want to accomplish a lot, and you don't necessarily want to pause while the rest of the world goes through some turmoil, because what your plan is. You want to keep going, but the rest of the world by contagion does impact you, so you have to pull back, right? I subscribe to that theory wholeheartedly. Aaron, it has been a pleasure learning about your complex business, and just so impressed with what you've accomplished and all over the world. I know that you're going to keep growing, and I wish you the best of luck in all that you do.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on. Having me as one of your guests. You've had some great guests on here, so I'm just happy to be in and amongst them, I guess.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that. I'm just fascinated with business men like Aaron. He is quite an entrepreneur. To, number one, get into a business that is so complex, so high risk, to build a brand, to get companies to say he's their man to handle the most serious of situations, and then to expand that globally. And you can see that he's building on new services with his new company, and it's all just extremely fascinating. Honored to have had him come into the studio and share his story with us. We appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.